Hi everyone, this is the second attempt at a video on the Musica shoulder rest. The first one was misguided because I mangled my Musica in a way that wasn't necessary, and a viewer pointed it out to me and I was a little bit embarrassed, but hey, if you can't admit when you're wrong and if you can't continue learning in life, then what are you doing? So this is going to be a much shorter video. I'm going to tell you where I went wrong and how you can get the adjustment that I was trying to get by drilling a new hole into my Musica without drilling a hole. Okay, so first of all, when you get your Musica, they come pinched incredibly tight. The feet are narrow, so narrow that I think it's not good for the violin. So spring those things out a little bit so it's snug, but not a death grip on your violin. Okay, number one. Number two, warning. This is a gouging hazard. For people who are short like I am, you're gonna want to lower this screw here as low as you can go, but don't do it because it will go so low that this swiveling bracket, this little housing right here, is going to dig into your violin when you put it on. And thank heavens I noticed, because I like to get this side as short as I can, and this will actually allow it to gouge your violin. It looks fine, looks like you've got clearance, but then you put it up to your shoulder, and we all push up a little bit. We shouldn't, but it happens, and it pushes it into your violin. So let me show you about the limit to where you can go. Look very closely. That's as low as you want to go. What's that about? Probably about 8 or 10 threads. Okay, and I was able to make it go much, much shorter by, let me show you what I did. I sawed off the end of this screw here, right here. This screw was long, kind of like this one is long. But to see how I shortened it, I sawed off this end, the back end of the screw, so that I'd have clearance and it wouldn't interfere with the curve of the shoulder rest. Because if the screw is poking out right there, then you have to bend your shoulder rest to get out of the way, and then you've got this awkward curve that keeps you trapped. Okay, so there's two things for you to keep in mind. Spread out those legs when you first get it brand new out of the box, and don't shorten this as far as it will allow you to, or you'll gouge your violin with this. Okay, now some adjustments that you can make with this Musica. This is incredibly bendable. There's nothing this thing can't do. I love it. I don't like how bulky it is, and it's pretty heavy, but man, if you're struggling and you just can't find the comfortable shoulder rest, you might want to try this out, because you can adapt this in so many ways. First of all, there's this bendable feature here, okay? But don't limit yourself to just bending one way. You can figure eight twist this thing. You can see how I've sort of twisted so that that's a little bit higher. That was to get it to completely mesh with my shoulder instead of being kind of on an edge. I twisted it so that it totally seats. So it seats fully on my shoulder. This end is the end that goes on your chest. You can bump it a little higher if you want to. If you want to change the tilt of your violin, if it's tilting too much, you can bump that little thing a little bit higher to change the tilt. Of course, you can accomplish that by raising the screw as well. There's multiple ways of making adjustments on the Musica. If you've got a corner digging into you, take some pliers and make little teeny bends. I bent this corner because it was digging into my chest. I took some needle nose pliers and I just went boom, and that made it nice and rounded and comfortable. Now let's talk about the adjustment that I made errantly that I didn't have to make. Let me show you what I did to my poor shoulder rest. You can see that big old misshapen hole right there. That's because I'm not all that great of a power tool worker, but I made that hole to enable me to go from a straight pad position like this. It enabled me to move it over so that it's in a curved pad position like that. And what that did is it pushed the shoulder pad up on my shoulder further, because I have really narrow sloping shoulders. It's easy for me to feel like the shoulder rest is on the edge of my shoulder and it's going to slip down. Well, that little adjustment bent the shoulder rest up onto my shoulder more. You can see how it's bending that way, and it's lovely. But I didn't have to mangle this. This is where a viewer, Leon, thank you, told me that there's more holes hiding. Look underneath the padding. You'll see all kinds of other holes right there. And these screws come out of those holes, and you can change the width. And what that allows you to do is it allows your shoulder rest to either fit in this pair of holes right here and there, or it gives you a wider set of holes to where you can fit and stretch over to this hole up here, which is off to the side a little bit. There against my face, it shows up nicely. That allows the screws to go through this original hole and that original hole. This one and that one. And you can see how they're off center. So it throws the pad up onto my shoulder. Do you see how it's curving up onto my shoulder now? And I didn't have to drill that other hole into the shoulder rest. But if you wanted to put it back in the original setting, then you'd have to put these screws a little bit closer together. So now I've moved the screw from this hole over to this hole, making them a smaller spacing, and then that allows me to put it back into the original straight position like that. See how they're straight now instead of off center. So that was a real key adjustment that Leon pointed out to me. So those of you who haven't already mangled your shoulder rest, you don't need to mangle your shoulder rest. Okay, now let me just give you a little bit of advice, if I could, about putting it on your violin. And when you're trying to find a comfortable shoulder rest, some things you can look out for. So you've got a lot of leeway on how you place it on your violin, and you need to pay attention to what works best for you. It's important to have a routine. I always put my shoulder end on first. It just works out that way because you hold the violin in the left hand. You put the shoulder side on under your chin rest and try to memorize where it goes in relation to your chin rest bracket. That's a good marker. And some students I've had even put temporary tape to remind them where that foot goes. So that's a good marker. And then you simply put the other end on to whatever snugness you want. Now, let me show you the difference that changing these settings can make. If I move, especially this foot, if I move this foot back, look what happened to my scroll. My scroll went off to the side several degrees. And for me, that is not going to work for a short player. I have to have my violin in at a 45-degree angle in order to be able to play a straight bow. So the placement of this foot is very important. So if you're not getting the snugness that you want on this foot so that it falls off, or it's too tight maybe, then you need to adjust the width of your shoulder rest so that you can achieve the snugness that you want, but this foot is where it belongs. The placement of the foot that goes under your chin rest, the shoulder side, is hugely important because it determines where the shoulder rest is going to sit on your shoulder. So closer to the chin rest bracket, closer to this thing, is going to move the shoulder rest more onto your shoulder. Further away from the chin rest bracket, down this direction, moves the shoulder rest further towards the edge of your shoulder. Okay, so keep those things in mind. The screws, the height of the screws do two things. On the shoulder side, it takes up any extra space that you have left between your shoulder and your jaw. Primarily, that's the job of your chin rest. You want to fill up as much of the space between your collarbone and your jaw with your chin rest as much as possible, and then anything that's left over will be done by raising or lowering the screw on this side. The screw on the chest side really impacts, as I mentioned before, it impacts the tilt of the violin. Okay, now one last thought about the Bonn Musica. See, it's touching my violin right now. I'm gonna raise that. Whew, such a hazard. The last thing I was going to mention about the Bonn Musica is the severity of the curve that you can achieve with this awesome pliable piece of metal. A lot of people curve it to the max and it's just hooked, so they can't go anywhere. It's set in place. I like to achieve as flat of a curve as I possibly can while still attaining the security that I need, because as a short player I do need a little bit of freedom for different type of passages. I'll slightly change the angle of the violin to help me to reach certain things that I need. So if you're a short player, don't always default to the most extreme bend. Try to see what you can do with a minimal bend and then work from there. All right, so there you have it. That's it. Just be careful about that gouging hazard. Be really careful. And thanks again, Leon, for pointing out that little adjustment. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this helps you, and I'll see you next time.